So, what does a war in Iran have to do with the housing market? Believe it or not, it has a ton to do with the housing market. In this video, I'm going to go over the impact that it's had on the housing market and how to navigate if you're thinking of buying and selling a home. Let's get started. So this video is not to talk about whether the war is good, bad, or advocate for either side. This war is directly to talk about the consequences of a war, because there is. You can believe in the war or not believe in the war, but you obviously know when you go to the gas pumps, it costs more. And just like that, you're also noticing interest rates going up. So this video is simply to explain the fact that we are in a war. We can't really change that at this point, and how to navigate that if you are buying or selling a home, or you're thinking about buying or selling a home, and how to kind of get around that and what to expect with this war essentially dragging out, and it seems for quite some time. So it doesn't appear that there's an end in sight. That's why I wanted to make this video, is to go over how we navigate through the future here if this war continues. So let's start out by squashing one of the big myths that it's killed the housing market. It absolutely has not done that. Now, I can't speak for every market. I'm talking specifically about Colorado and Austin, Texas area. People are still buying and selling. The war hasn't crushed the housing market. We are not into a major recession at this point. However, interest rates have definitely been impacted. And the reason why is when everything gets more expensive, you have inflation. When cost of goods and services, fuel go up, interest rates follow. So with that, with the war being directly correlated to oil and gas, it makes things more expensive. When that happens, obviously inflation kicks in, and we are seeing rates really spike up. What is the good part of this? The good part of this is there is less competition for buyers. So if you are on the buyer side of this, it's actually not a horrendous thing at this point. The reason is sellers are having to give you seller concessions. And what that means is they not only pay your closing costs, but they also buy your rate down. So I'm just throwing an example out here. It's not a rate quote, but let's say, for instance, the organic rate is 7.25 today, and you go put an offer on a home. Typically, if you're working with a good agent, for instance, me, what I would do is I would ask for enough seller concessions that pays for your closing costs. And in addition for that, my goal would be to get your interest rate down. And again, this is just an example, from 7.25 to maybe 5.99. And we're having the sellers do that and pay for that. And we didn't see that when rates were extremely low. If you guys remember, during the time of COVID, when the housing market was booming, you could not ask for those things. If you asked a seller to give you money to buy down your rate or pay your closing costs, you'd get laughed at. So the good news is there's less competition, which means you can ask for more. We're seeing people ask for a ton off the sticker price of the home, in addition to those closing costs and rate buy downs. So you can play the game, and as long as you're in an area that allows for good negotiating, and there's still many of those. Of course, there's those outlier communities where there's still bidding wars and things like that. So this doesn't necessarily apply to that. You would just essentially have to eat the higher rate in those areas. But what I'm always having to remind people is the starting rate is just a start. If you're looking at a home that's been on Zillow or on the market for 90 plus days, typically they have a lot of negotiating room in there that you can get that interest rate bought down quite a bit, get your payment in line and things like that. So I'm seeing that as a way to combat it from the buyer side. I always tell buyers, you want to buy when nobody else is buying. And right now we're seeing that a lot. Now, switching to sellers, you can still sell your home, but it's more important than ever that as a seller, you're realistic about your home value. A lot of people come in with the philosophy they want to price super high and then work their way down, and it almost never works out successfully. If you are going to sell a home in these times of high interest rates, you really have to come out swinging. So you've got competition on the market, you've got other inventory, and those people are having to work in the same environment as you. So what happens is other people are willing to reduce their price and give seller concessions. You don't want to get caught up in a game where you are literally just where you start out super high, You do price reduction after price reduction after price reduction. Nothing reeks more desperation than seeing 10 price cuts. You are better off starting out at a reasonable price. Now, if you have priced it a little bit too low, the market's going to correct you. So let's say you're 10,000 below what you should have gotten for the house and you price it as such, you're going to get multiple showings, you're going to get multiple offers, and you're going to end up back at the higher amount anyway. It's almost always impossible to price too low, but it is definitely possible to price too high. I see that over and over, and I know it's how we've sold other things. Start high and there's negotiating room. But in the day and age of internet where you have Zillow and all this historical data that you can look at, someone can come in and see where you started, how long it's been on the market, and things like that. This wouldn't even apply if the internet wasn't around and nobody could see the history of the price cuts and the time on market. Then you sure start super high. Nobody's going to be wiser, but that is not the day and time we're in right now. I see people get so much less. So again, come out priced appropriately, especially while we're in this conflict. The thing that you have to remember too is why there's less buyers. If you're paying $4.20 a gallon at the gas pumps, and then when you go to buy groceries, you can barely afford that too. How many people have on their mind that they're willing to pay a high mortgage or can't even afford that right now? So as times get tougher, you really have to adjust and price smart to get your home sold. Now, is it an optimal time to sell? No, it's not. If you are wanting to cash out and get the most you want for your money, I have to be honest, you're probably better waiting out the market until this conflict is over, but we have no idea when that's going to be. And most people want to move about their day. And the biggest thing that I say to people is if you are going to sell and you're going to sell for less than what you want, there's a high probability that you're also going to get a deal on the buyer side. So it's typically a wash. For instance, during COVID, you could sell your house for $1 gazillion, way more than what it was worth. However, when you went to buy, you were going to pay way more than what it's worth. So it's usually a wash. If you are going to sell in the same area as you are going to buy and you get less for your house, make the person price their house less or negotiate down on the purchase side. Again, it ends up being a wash. But what I'm seeing in this market right now is it's a little bit tougher. If this war and conflict keeps going, I think interest rates are going to keep getting worse. What could happen is we could end up hitting a recession at some point. If that happens, traditionally interest rates come down, but not always. We've seen some craziness lately. There was some brief talk about the Fed actually raising interest rates. A lot of that talk has kind of dissipated to more staying flat. However, we are in a world of just complete unknown. A lot of this is unprecedented. Much like COVID, there's not a lot of historical data to show what's going to happen or what the future holds. You kind of have to operate in what you've been given. So the important thing to realize is people are still buying and selling. You just have to do it a little bit smarter. Buyers can get a better deal. Sorry, sellers, but it's the truth. Sellers, if you're going to sell and most likely buy, make sure you're getting a good deal on the buy side and it'll end up being a wash. If you have any questions about what your home might sell for in this market, feel free to reach out. I'm always happy to be here, be a resource for you in any questions that you have. I look forward to talking to you on the next one. Thanks.